In Lamentations we read, "God's mercy is bigger than any of your mistakes." This gives us an idea of the great love God has for each of us, a love which allows us the freedom to choose and the freedom to return to Him if our choice turns out to be the wrong one.
God's love gave us Jesus, and Jesus shows us the way to mercy, the way to the heart of God. At His crucifixion, Jesus calls out to His Father and our Father and says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." How enormous is the heart of God when He can forgive the people who kill Him. How enormous is our responsibility to try to be as forgiving and merciful as Christ.
Jesus shows us how to forgive our friends. After Jesus' death, Peter is distraught and disheartened. All he wants to do is go back to what he was, a fisherman. So he tells his friends, "I am going fishing." And while they are fishing, they meet the resurrected Christ. He is on the shore and calls out, "Let down your nets on the right side of your boat." The fish were so plentiful, the nets were bursting. And Peter swims to the shore to be the first one to meet Jesus. It's on the shore where Peter is asked by Jesus, "Do you love me more than these?" Jesus responds eagerly, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus responds, "Feed my lambs." A second time he is asked, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Again, Peter replies, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus replies, "Tend my sheep." And then the Lord asks a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And now Peter feels hurt, perhaps the same hurt that Jesus felt when Peter denied him 3 times. But Peter replied more strongly than before, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus tells him, "Feed my sheep." Then Jesus says to Peter, "When you were younger, you used to fasten your belt and go where you wanted to go. But when you grew old, someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." After this, Jesus said to him, "Follow me."
Luke points out in this story the true nature of forgiveness and mercy. It is a mercy with expectations. If I, God, show you mercy, you must be merciful to those whom I send your way. The people of God are many, and all of them deserve mercy, not because of who they may be or what they may have done, but because God asks it of us. It is up to us, as it was to Peter, to follow Christ's example and to share his mercy for us with those whom we come into contact.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad that you could join us here this evening at St. Francis Church. My name is Katrina Gowett, and I'm a grade 8 teacher at St. Paul's School, and I will be moderating this evening's panel discussion. So this evening came together in an effort to celebrate a closing to our Year of Mercy and view it through the lens of our St. Francis youth. This evening is an opportunity to explore God's mercy in our lives and the challenges youth face in today's ever-changing world. The 2016 Jubilee was first announced by Pope Francis on March 13th in 2015. And like previous Jubilees, it's seen by the Church as a period of remission of sins and universal pardon, focusing particularly on God's forgiveness and mercy. Our first question is, how have you come to know about God's mercy?
I came to know God's mercy at a very young age. When I was 22 months old, I was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. And when I was 4 years old, I received a bone marrow transplant. My brother was the donor, and while I attended church and was in Sunday school, every once in a while, as we would come as a family and get there early, I would receive comments from the various parishioners just saying how much that they were praying for me and getting back to me. And these were shocking at first because I didn't know until I was much older how difficult things were, or how how bad things had been and what that meant to me, but more importantly, what it meant to my mother and father who were going through this. Although I was, 4 or 5 when I had the transplant, and as I said, my brother was the donor. He was about a year and a half younger, so those are pretty young kids to be dealing with. But for them to receive those thoughtful comments, and of course receiving the prayers, and I think it was just a little bit later as I grew up, and I was still hearing from these same parishioners, these wonderful, caring individuals, about the prayers that they were constantly saying for me. It slowly sunk in that I started to understand what mercy was, but keeping those thoughts of God's mercy in our life and when they've touched us is something that I think certainly has assisted me in showing mercy, and I believe it's something that can help us all.
Grew up in a Catholic family and in a Catholic school system for the majority of my life so far. So I was very exposed to God and his teachings and what it meant to be merciful and other virtues. And through all those experiences, good or bad, it's really shown me that no matter who you are, no matter how many times you sin, you are always loved through God's eyes. And I think that's a very vital aspect of mercy.
I really started noticing God's mercy when I opened my eyes, when I slowed down and thought about things. I would realize how patient the person in front of the line was when they were waiting for the credit card scanner to work, or when there was a waitress who would say please and thank you. Even someone who would hold a door open for me when I was walking. And I noticed all these people who, even without knowing it, were so kind, and all the little things, they make a big difference.
For a second question, and this time we'd like to know how you personally have experienced God's mercy.
People have come and gone from my life, and I've always somehow managed to end up in conflicts, whether it have been small ones in elementary school, big clique conflicts in high school. I've always managed to end up in the middle of them. Don't know why, but those experiences have definitely allowed me to experience God's mercy. I've been through hard times, as I'm sure many of you have as well. Whether it be wrong I do by someone else, or someone else does wrong by me, or I even do wrong to myself, I know that mercy will eventually follow. And I think reaching that point of being merciful towards someone, or being on the receiving end of it, brings myself personally a sense of peace. And I think whenever someone offers you mercy, as I mentioned, or you're accepting that mercy, I think it's God working in his one of mysterious ways to allow us to do that for each other.
I have this friend, and my friend, she's very nice, and I like her very much. But last year, there was a big kerfuffle. There was a big fight between us. And we weren't getting along very well. It was an oil and water situation. But so one day, my group of friends, we were going to go somewhere for lunch. And we made the decision to go somewhere without her physically being there. And she got very mad at us and said that we weren't true friends and things like that. And it was really sad, but after a couple minutes of her releasing her frustrations, she came back and she said sorry. And none of us were expecting it. And when it happened, I really didn't think much about it. Now I really see that God gave my friend this opportunity to try again and to do something differently, and she took it, and she's doing great now. She's very nice.
When I was in grade 3, my friend and I, he's one of my closest friends now, he and I got into a really big argument about a video game called Animal Crossing. And, it was a big conflict, and it always sticks out in my mind because I said some really mean things back then to him when we got in that argument. And I remember I felt so bad after because he wouldn't play with me anymore. He wouldn't play with me on the playground. I would look at him and he'd look away. And, I felt really bad for saying these horrible things to him. So I went back to him a week later and I apologized. And it was very sincere. I was sobbing out on the playground. It was... I felt relieved when he said, "It's okay, Bill. We can be friends again." And now my relationship with him is one of my closest friendships I've ever had, and that's how I've personally experienced God's mercy working through me.
And question 3 that Kate's going to start off with answering is, what are the challenges you personally and young people your age face in living a life of mercy?
We made a mind map, a brainstorm with our entire class of all of these great ideas answering the questions. So one of the common answers was that forgiving others, and especially forgetting what they had done, not holding a grudge, was very hard. Praying, being a part of the community, even remembering to pray every day, they found very busy. Their lives were very busy, and they would forget. They were always thinking of something else. If they were very negative, they wouldn't be merciful. They would be blinded by their anger, and in doing so, they would make poor decisions. Another one is peer pressure, which affects all of us. And it's very important to realize that.
Something that makes it tough for people my age to live a life of mercy is stereotype there is attached to being religious. Sometimes you're seen to be as, you're being nice because you want to go to heaven, not because you truly want to be nice to people. Sort of these things make it difficult because you're always conscious about what people think about you when you do the sign of a cross in public before you eat, or stuff like that. It makes us sort of nervous. Do they think I'm weird for being Catholic? And it's disappointing that we feel that way. We feel sort of almost, people my age feel disappointed to be Catholic, or they feel disappointed and they feel nervous to practice their Catholicism in public. So this sort of social, this sort of stigma makes it difficult for people my age to live a life of mercy.
One of the biggest challenges is having busy schedules. So a lot of students my age see university as the last step before the rest of their lives. So everything going on in university, it just takes over, and things like religion or God or praying take a back seat. From high school to university, there is something about religious, let alone merciful, that's not cool. So as Bill mentioned, doing the sign of the cross before you eat a meal, or just anything that has to do with religion, you feel that you need to be a lot more reserved with yourself, especially in an environment like university. It's not as open as it would be in a Catholic school because it's university. People are coming from different backgrounds, so you feel like you need to keep something like religion or practicing things from religion to yourself and not made as obvious to other people. And as Bill said, it's disappointing that there is such stigmatism towards that, and that we feel that we need to hide stuff like that from other people, because religion is a beautiful thing. Doesn't matter if you're Catholic, a Buddhist, Hindu, doesn't matter what religion you're coming from. It's all aiming to be, or working towards the greater good, or being just more loving as human beings, and realizing that we're not perfect and we need each other to make it through the challenges that we're facing in this world.
An outgoing person, but I'm not an outgoing person necessarily with my faith. I wait till no one's looking, and I have my lunch at my desk, and really quick, as fast as I can, in case someone sees me. Now, I don't know why that is. Maybe I don't have the confidence, or I don't have the strength that I find is lacking. But I think it's due to a lot of the impacts that we have in our life.
We're going to our final question. Bill's going to start us off to answer. But we're asking, what can the church do to be a more merciful church?
Sometimes people my age, our point of view is sometimes neglected or not taken seriously. I think something that would definitely help us, the church can do to help us live a life of mercy, is create more opportunities that people my age can be involved with, whether it's around the church or in the community. Opportunities like this will make people my age feel like we mean something to the church. We mean something to the community and the people around us, and that people my age can actually contribute and help make it a better place to be. Sometimes we feel like we're not being heard when we're going through a tough time. Something that the church can do to make us feel more important is sort of opening up arms to us, listening to what we have to say. I think the youth panel is a wonderful example of that, opening up this opportunity for us to express how we feel.
So my age group, the people I talked to, they had many ideas, and they were more than happy to share them. Like Bill, lots of them suggested more programs for different age groups, but not necessarily programs that are faith-based. So a intramurals organization where we could come down here and play games like, I don't know, like hide and seek, I guess you could say, or go out in the parking lot and play soccer, or on the grass and play tag, just things like that. We talk a lot about vocations in our church, and many youth associate a vocation as a job. And because we are so young and we don't have jobs, we automatically think that it does not apply to us and that we can't have a vocation, we don't have a call. Because we don't have a job, it's hard for us to get work because people underestimate us. Also, we thought about the people who were sick and going through tough times, and we thought that we could make cards for them, because I know that the Catholic Women's League is making prayer shawls, and lots of people my age don't know how to knit or how to make them, but we know how to write and we know how to draw. So making cards is something that we can do to help and be part of the community. We also thought that it would be a nice idea for advertising more things that we do, like reconciliation, maybe advertising it not only through the church but through schools. And that way we could get more people to confession and help more youth to open up and become more connected with God.
For years, we're listening to readings and passages which talk about mercy throughout God's teachings and through the impact of the Lord's teachings to his to his disciples and to those who were living at that time. However, not that I'm not paying attention when these readings are going on, but a lot of times, certainly with my experience, I'm left with, oh, okay, that would be a great sign of mercy. And a lot of the immediate aspect of what hits me the most is, yeah, I should probably be kinder to others. But the other way that I think it could help as well is not going against anything that you've all brought up. I think that's it's key, but almost a how-to, an ABC on how to be merciful. I don't mean a dummy's guide to it all, but maybe through sessions, maybe through maybe there's ways that we have not thought about the way we could be merciful and show kindness to others.
We're going to now open it up to questions from the audience. So if you have a question, you could address it to the whole panel, or you could address it to one or two people.
It's definitely the easier way to do things over text message or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever other app there is out there. I know I'm guilty of doing it just because I think it's a lot more comfortable to hide behind a screen when you're being merciful towards someone or when you're receiving mercy, because that act alone is so vulnerable. So it is definitely the easier way, but I think still having that face-to-face interaction, there's just something about having that personal interaction with someone that just makes it more valuable, more meaningful, and I think it has a greater impact.
It's much less work, I feel, to apologize over text or through social media, because you don't have to face the person's real reaction. You only see what they want you to see, and it's so easy. It's like cheating. And I have accepted apologies through that, but I've also seen people be extremely rude and very different when they're using technology and when they're at recess.
I'm going to provide a very different opinion than everybody else here. I think because a lot of my communication is through technology, I don't feel like because it's easier, it makes it less thoughtful. Even though I feel like when I'm giving an apology or when I'm receiving an apology through a text message, I can honestly tell whether or not they're putting the effort into using their words effectively to pass on a message of their feelings. And when I'm sending that, I feel honestly, I feel just as fulfilled when they accept apology through a text message that I took half an hour to write apologizing than if I made plans to go out and sit down at a cafe to apologize. I'm not saying that people should use text message if you're lazy and you don't want to apologize. I mean, if you want to apologize, you apologize. Me, personally, I feel like if I were to apologize through a text message and they accepted my apology and I put time into writing a message that, really represents how I felt, then it's just as fulfilling for me.
When we talk about religion in my school setting, it's so forced. It's very forced. We go to reconciliation at I'm not sure if it's once a year or twice a year, but we sit in the gym and we write on these slips of paper and then they get burned. And not necessarily it's a bad thing. It's great that they're getting us all to do reconciliation, but a lot of people feel, why do I have to do this just so that my teacher can write a comment on my report card? And I think that if we were able to find a way to make talking about religion and doing things with it seem less like work for people my age, then it would be more common.
For me, I feel as if it shows weakness.
Saying sorry shows your vulnerability, which isn't something that we like to show to everyone.
Sometimes I feel like when I say sorry, I'm wrong, and I don't like to admit when I'm wrong.
When you say sorry, there's always an uncertainty about how the other person will react to your apology, and you're always worried about whether or not they'll actually accept your apology.
I'm so thrilled that we did this. I hope that you as an audience feel the same way. I'm thrilled that I got to be a part of it as well. I'd really like to thank St. Francis Church and St. Francis CWL for pulling this together and inviting our youth to speak right from their heart about how they feel about mercy and faith and how they live it out on a daily basis.